The first kind of way that I monetized my podcast was actually from creating an agency and monetizing the natural demand that was coming to me. And that was when I started my marketing agency. And so the guests that would come on my show, often I would end the show and they would immediately say, Hala, who does your videos? And I'd say, oh, I have this intern. Like, I've got interns. I've got a volunteer team. Like, I have a full time job. So, like, I can't help you. Sorry. And I maybe had this conversation like 30 times, like
Wow.
literally. And so everybody would always be like, who like produces your show or who does your marketing? Do you offer this? And I'd always say, no, no, no. Then one day, Heather Monahan came on my show and she would not give up. She got on a call with me. She's like, show me how you do your videos, show me your templates. So I showed her our Slack, I showed her our Drive, and she was like, Hala, I literally just had a call with Gary Vee's team 2 weeks ago, and your stuff is more impressive. Like, you have to start a marketing agency. You have it. Like, I want to be your first client. And I said, all right, I'll give it a shot. So that was when everything turned around and we quickly started to monetize. Within the next month, we were making $40,000 a month just with the marketing agency. By the next month, it was like 60, then 80, then 100. And it's like we just kept getting these marketing clients. And it happened so quickly and so organically because my podcast was a lead generation tool. We did podcast, we did social media. It started with videos and images, and then it turned into taking over LinkedIn. Then it turned into taking over people's LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, and then end-to-end podcasts. It's like everything that my team did for me, I just started to sell to my clients. And so the people who would come on my show were my typical target clients. They were best-selling authors, CEOs, celebrities. And so people often think that there's only one way to monetize a podcast, and there's not. You can use your guests as a lead generation source. So that's what I did and how I first cracked the code to monetize my show. And within 1 year, we made almost $2 million with our agency. And I've scaled it to over 60 team members. So that was the first way that I really, really cracked the code. Monetization came later in terms of sponsorship. So I did the marketing agency for about like 8 months or so. And then I started to understand how things worked in terms of monetizing my show, because I was learning from people like Jordan Harbinger, who was my mentor. And he told me like I needed dynamic ad insertion and like all this kind of stuff. So like the sponsors like happened slowly and slowly because I started to learn more about that industry. The first way that I monetized was starting my agency. So I'll pause there before I keep going, because I know that was kind of a lot.
No, I really like that you gave us that backstory because, to your point, I think a lot of podcasters, especially podcasters who are just starting out, they really believe the only way to monetize a show is through sponsorships, which, as you just stated, it's a lot harder to grab those bigger sponsorships when you have a small listenership. So the fact that you were able to utilize your guests as a lead gen method, which is very similar to, things we've done here as well, like being able to meet people through the podcast. I truly believe podcasting is the best networking tool out there. Like, it's such a great way to connect with people that you normally wouldn't have an opportunity to cross paths with. So
Exactly.
I think that was so smart how you were able to turn that then into a thriving agency. And so then after you had set up this successful agency, actually, before I ask you that next question, just because I know our listeners really love numbers and the nitty gritty, when you started signing clients, I know that you were just taking the systems and the skills that you were already utilizing for promoting your own show and just transferring it essentially to these clients. What were you charging on a retainer basis for these clients that allowed you to scale to that 2 million so quickly?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you, it's funny because it's like my first deal with Heather Monahan started at like $800 a month. Like, it was so little because I was like, I have no idea if I could do this, and I don't want you to like hate me after this. So I did like this, like until this day, like she gets like the low, like she just gets the love because she's the one that started it all.
Yeah.
So, but my next client was $30,000 a month. $30,000 a month retainer was my next
Wow.
client. And that
30,000.
$30,000 a month was my next client. And
Yay.
that just like flipped everything off the switch. But the thing that you have to realize is that I I had built the team already. I was building this before I knew I was building this. And the other thing is that like I truly was an expert. Like I did blow up my LinkedIn. I did know everything about podcasting. So it was easy to kind of like take it on and just like scale it out. So the thing that I want people to realize is that not everyone's going to start a marketing agency. What you want to think about is how can you start a podcast where your guests are your ideal client? So if you're a real estate agent, how do you interview people that might want to buy houses? Like, you know what I mean? Or whatever it is. For your doctor, like I can't think of any analogies off the top of my head, but basically it's like, think about what you're good at and then try to interview the people that you want to conduct services for. And then also the other key lesson is pay attention to what people are telling you you're good at. I could have started this agency a year earlier. And the agency is what really blew everything up for me, because once I got like, you know, my first $30,000 a month, for example, that I could pay my team, all of a sudden I had resources to do media buying and advertising. All of a sudden I had the same level of team that like my client that had basically that client was funding my brand too, all of a sudden. And so it was like, it's not really, and to be honest, I never had the goal to be a marketing CEO, but I was really good at it and I had the skills. So I was like, let me do this. Really, my goal was when anybody would ever ask me, like, where do you see Young and Profiting in 5 years before the marketing agency? I always said, well, we're going to have a podcast network and we're going to have like a podcast network and help people grow and monetize their shows. And then now I've started that, but it's because of the marketing agency and because the marketing agency basically funded me, and I consider my clients like my investors. So it's kind of like switching your mentality and understanding that there's not just like one path to success. Because if I had just been focused on let me get sponsors for my show, it's like my show grew so much last year just because I had money finally to invest in my show.